Captain America Brave New World is going to set Wolverine up in the Marvel Cinematic Universe by introducing Weapons Plus through Giancarlo Esposito and Isaiah Bradley. I know it sounds crazy, bear with me on this. So I was on a live stream yesterday with Josh at Den of Nerds and Paul at Heavy Spoilers, and we were just kind of workshopping what Giancarlo Esposito was going to be doing in the MCU, because recent news has come out that said that he's going to have a kind of cameo role in Captain America Brave New World, but it's going to tease something very, very big. And that tease is going to be followed up in a series launched by Marvel Studios. And while we were talking about that, I was thinking that it makes sense. You don't bring someone like Giancarlo Esposito in to have him play a throwaway role. At the same time, though, Captain America Brave New World is likely just going to be the plot of Captain America Red, White, and Black from Marvel Comics, which was the comic book storyline that introduced Isaiah Bradley and explored his whole origin. And so what I want to do is I want to put the whole MCU on hold for a second, and I want to talk about Weapons Plus and Isaiah Bradley and Marvel Comics. Then we'll wrap back around and you guys will see how it all links together. So what ended up happening in Marvel was that Isaiah Bradley was introduced in a comic called Red, White, and Black. The whole idea behind this was it was effectively Steve Rogers at least hearing rumors about Isaiah Bradley and then ultimately following this breadcrumb trail to see how far it went. And by the end of the story, he actually meets Isaiah Bradley. But over the course of it, what you end up learning was that in the aftermath of Steve Rogers being believed to have been dead and Abraham Erskine actually dying, there was no way for the federal government to create an exact replica of the super soldier serum. So they tried to create one of their own. And they used Isaiah Bradley and his platoon out in Camp Cathcart as basically guinea pigs, right? Like give them this experimental serum and see what happens. A lot of the guys that were given this experimental serum died, like almost immediately. But those that didn't were sent out into World War II. And Isaiah Bradley proved to be the most capable out of all of them. Now, over the course of the story, pretty much all of Isaiah Bradley's squad mates die. And even Isaiah Bradley himself ends up succumbing to the effects of the serum, which is to say his intelligence is reduced drastically. I want to say that he loses the ability to speak, but I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was pretty dark and it was really, really gruesome. But this sort of coincided with the advent of Weapons Plus in Marvel Comics. And what I mean by that is Weapons Plus was separate from Isaiah Bradley. He was not actually a part of it, but there are two real origins for Weapons Plus in Marvel. The first one is Grant Morrison's new X-Men, and then the second one is the more traditional origin. I think the Marvel Cinematic Universe is going to go with the traditional origin. The reason for this is because Grant Morrison established that Weapons Plus was created to develop super soldiers in response to the rising population of mutants and humanity believing that the mutant population was a clear and present danger and an existential threat. The issue with this is that while we do have some post-credit scenes from like the Marvels, right, like showing the X-Men, albeit in an alternate universe, or we have the revelation that Kamala Khan actually has an X gene, within the Marvel Universe itself, mutants have not been shown to be a credible threat to humanity. So it wouldn't make any sense for them to turn around and then introduce Weapons Plus as a counter to the threat of the mutant population, unless they've been a threat all this time and we just simply didn't know about it. But for the sake of simplicity, I think they're going to go with the classic origin. And what the classic origin said in Marvel Comics was that in the aftermath of Steve Rogers, while he was believed to have been dead and Abraham Erskine was actually killed, the super soldier program proved to be a success. And so what the government did is it created Weapons Plus as a way to develop more super soldiers. And this came in the form of projects or weapons. Weapon 1, Weapon 2, Weapon 3, Weapon 4, so on and so forth, all the way up to Weapon 10, also known as Wolverine. And so what I think the Marvel Cinematic Universe is going to do here is they're going to take all of these things and roll them in together. I think Deadpool 3 is going to basically say Wolverine exists in the MCU. Full stop. That's all we get, right? Like in the main Marvel Universe, he's there. And then I think between Captain America Brave New World and the series that's going to come after, we're going to get Giancarlo Esposito introduced as Abraham Cornelius, possibly Truett Hudson. And then the series that he's talking about is going to be a Weapons Plus series. And I think what they're going to do is they're going to tie Isaiah Bradley into it. They're going to say that in the aftermath of Captain America being believed to have been dead, that Isaiah Bradley was experimented on by the federal government to become the new Captain America, or at least to see if the super soldier serum could actually work as it was developed by the federal government. His story is going to unfold however it unfolds. Sam Wilson will clearly play the role of Steve Rogers from Captain America Red, White, and Black, where he's the one like going through all this history and learning about Isaiah Bradley and how the story unfolds and all that kind of good stuff. And that Giancarlo Esposito will be introduced as Abraham Cornelius, potentially Truett Hudson, but it'll be done in the form of a flashback, hence the like cameo tease. It'll show like the experiments on Isaiah Bradley, and Giancarlo Esposito will be the one doing all of that stuff, whether he's Abraham Cornelius or Truett Hudson or whatever. That'll go into the Weapons Plus series, which is going to be a flashback series. The whole series, I think, is going to take place in the past, and it's going to follow up to Isaiah Bradley after his story is over, and it's going to show like the overall development of Weapons Plus, how Weapons Plus was organized and structured by the federal government, the different projects that came after. And I think it's going to start going into like the 1960s. The reason why I say that is because in Marvel Comics, assuming the Marvel Cinematic Universe decides to do like a one-to-one copy to the comics, that Wolverine was introduced in Weapons Plus during that point in time, because he was part of a group called Team X, which was a Black Ops wet work team, right, working for the CIA. But because of their capabilities, they were brought into Weapons Plus as the 10th project, also known as Weapon X. Wolverine had adamantium bonded to his skeleton, and that was it, right? He goes forward as a character that we know. And so ultimately he escapes and, you know, Wolverine does Wolverine's thing. But here's the thing about this. There are definitely like holes in this theory, and no doubt you guys down in the comments will poke all the holes in them. You'll highlight every single one of these, as you always do. But the funny thing about this is, like, a couple years ago on Geek Culture Explained, back when I was running that channel, I had this video where I talked about how to introduce Wolverine into the MCU. And basically it was this, right? Like, launch a TV series that focuses on Wolverine's origin, like from the time that he originally appeared, but the brunt of this stuff should focus on Weapons Plus, right? It should focus on tying all these things together. Now, I involved Hydra in that video, right? What I said is you should bring Hydra in, because as interesting as Hydra was in like the first 10 years, I still argue they were painfully underutilized. But what you would say here was that Hydra had basically started developing Weapons Plus when they were secretly taking control of S.H.I.E.L.D., and that Weapons Plus were basically super soldiers designed to carry out the will of Hydra. That ultimately led into the introduction of Wolverine. But whether or not they go that route is irrelevant. It would make perfect sense to me that Giancarlo Esposito is playing the role of Abraham Cornelius, and that this is how they're going to give us the back end of Wolverine. And that between his appearance in Deadpool 3, going into Captain America Brave New World, and eventually the Weapons Plus series, which no doubt will likely end, at least the first season if they do more than one, with like Wolverine being brought in and them saying like, let's begin Weapon X, right? And Wolverine's just like sitting there in a tank, you know, something like that, just hovering in the water, that it would basically dovetail and give us the origin of Wolverine, not in a wholesale sense. That'll likely be done in like a Wolverine film or potentially a Wolverine show. But this is how I think it all ties together, guys, right? This is what I think is happening, right? I think that Brave New World will give us Isaiah Bradley, that Isaiah Bradley's introduction will also introduce Weapons Plus. That'll get its own show. It'll give us the whole process of experiments, dead ending to the origin of Wolverine with adamantium bonded to his body, and you go forward from there. One of the big issues that you run into here, though, is that adamantium, as I understand it, is supposed to be introduced in Captain America Brave New World, but it'll be done by way of like the corpse of Tiamu the Celestial, which has just been sitting in the ocean all this time and no one seems to have acknowledged it outside of some silly little moment from She-Hulk. I don't know if that's the case, and honestly, I don't think anybody knows. I think that's just kind of a rumor that's circulating around out there that a lot of people are just running with. I mean, truth to tell, I still think the best way to introduce adamantium into the Marvel Cinematic Universe would be to just say that like when Hydra was secretly controlling S.H.I.E.L.D., they discovered vibranium, right? Like we know that from Black Panther 2, that it was down in the water, and that Hydra were the first ones to figure it out. They weren't able to get a whole lot of it because, of course, as we saw in Black Panther 2, that Namor the Submariner and his forces just like immediately attack anybody who goes into the water when they're not supposed to be experimenting and, you know, checking around in that area. But all Hydra did is they were trying to create or synthesize more of the vibranium and accidentally created adamantium in the process. And that when that was done, that was used to bond to Wolverine's skeleton. But again, there's any number of ways that you can go about, you know, this whole process and this whole experiment. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments section, right? Like, do you think this is a credible theory? I'm curious what your all's thoughts are, and I will catch you all later. Peace.